Hey, what's up? It's your boy Roland. Today I'm recording the final episode of Destination Unknown, a solo travel adventure. This is the 10th episode in a 10-part video series where I go over all of my travels in 2017. This episode includes my brief travels in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia. So let's get going! Alright, so in episode 9, I had been traveling in Croatia, which I loved a lot. It's a beautiful place, it's quite cheap, but I decided to go somewhere even cheaper, Bosnia and Herzegovina, where I could get a hostel for $9 a night, and if I really tried I could get food for less than $7 a day, which meant altogether I was spending about $20 or less. And that makes me feel good, because I like saving money. So from Croatia, I would take a bus to Mostar. The hostel that I stayed in was very basic, but it was close to the old town. I could walk downtown and check out the buildings. Now, something about Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's been through a lot of turmoil. It has a very complicated history with war, after World War II and all the horrible things that happened in Bosnia and all the other surrounding countries. Most of those countries joined the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, and it remained that way for quite a while. In the 90s, the Bosnian ethnic war broke out. This was a very violent and extreme war between Bosnian Muslims, Bosnian Catholics, and Bosnian Orthodox Christians. They all hated each other a lot, and you can see the evidence of the terrible things that happened just by walking around in Mostar and a lot of other cities there. There's plenty of abandoned buildings. You see bullet holes riddled in many buildings as well. On hikes, they say not to go off trail as there's thousands of landmines still active up in the mountains. And even in the way Bosnians might talk about other people in the country, you can see that the ethnic turmoil really left its mark. Neighborhoods are still sometimes split up by ethnicity. It had a very heavy feeling while walking around, seeing all this leftover war. In Mostar, you can go to this building that used to be a bank during the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. It's completely abandoned and stripped of any insides. The entrance is blocked by a wall of bricks, but you can go around the backside, climb in, and go all the way to the top of the tower. It is the tallest building in the area and was actually used as a sniper tower during the Bosnian War. Kind of a dark place. But at the top of it, there is a beautiful view. I did some parkour up there. You can see all the pretty roofs of the buildings in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And it's a free attraction, which always attracts me. It was nice to be able to explore there without crowds of tourists and whatnot. The first couple nights I was in Bosnia and Herzegovina, there were hardcore storms going on, especially during the nighttime. There was thunder and lightning almost every night. In the hostel I was in, there was a mother cat with her kittens who had just been born, and they were really fun to play and interact with. The second morning that I woke up in my hostel, one of the hostel workers said they had found one of the kittens dead from the storm. They weren't sure what happened to her, but it was quite sad. Another night you could tell how terrible the storm was because a couple new friends and I were in a bar drinking, having fun, and one of the gutters bust and water was pouring into the bar. A few other nights I hung out with people from the hostel. We would go to traditional Bosnian places for food. One dinner we got Bosnian sausage and bread, and dang, it was delicious, and quite cheap as well. One night I did go out with a bunch of new friends that I had made. I drank a whole bottle of red wine, and then we went to the Black Dog pub.
I didn't know.
You never zoomed like that? Maybe you haven't updated Snapchat. Played games, laughed, and talked. They were from all different countries, so we had lots to talk about. I got to liking this girl Alishka, and her friend, myself, and one other guy went out dancing after everyone had gone home, and we danced for a couple hours. Alishka was from Czechoslovakia. She didn't speak the best English, and I didn't speak any amount of Czech, but we had a great time together. She and her friend left the next morning. I hoped that I would see her in the future as I kept traveling. Right outside of my hostel there was this creek that I really wanted to jump. Took me a few days to work up to it, but I did eventually make the jump. I should have also jumped back and done a precision onto the ledge, but I couldn't work myself up to do that. There was one day in Bosnia where I went out to a park and was training for a few hours, and a few Bosnian kids came up to me asking what I was doing. They could barely speak English at all. I taught those Bosnian boys how to do a shoulder roll just by showing them and helping them correct their technique. We hung out for 2 hours climbing and running around. I don't think they had really seen anybody do gymnastics or parkour of any kind, so they were very, very interested. The next day I was really sore, so I would kind of bum around, look around the city. Sit in cafes, journal, drink coffee. I was also sending out a lot of workaway emails because I wanted to get a work stay. I was trying to find a good place, hopefully in Montenegro, where I could get food and accommodation. It had been 4.5 months of me traveling at this point, and I was kind of tired of just bumming around. I wanted to do some actual work, and I wanted to stop spending money too. From Mostar, I would get a bus to Sarajevo, the capital city of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Unfortunately, I did not get to explore this city very much. The night that I got to Sarajevo, I had a terrible sore throat. Then I woke up in the middle of the night with a horrible fever. I was burning up. I could not sleep. I wrote that I barely survived the night, only got about 4 hours of sleep, and I woke up feeling even worse than the night before. Plus, I had a pounding headache. I wrote in my journal that I was miserable. I would go out for food sometimes. Other than that, though, I would just stay in my bed and I would watch Netflix and try to chill out. I ate lots of soup and rice. I took some pain meds and sleepy medicine to make sure that I slept a full night the next night, but I still could not. I would wake up sweating heavily and my throat was absolutely killing me. I was making a ton of spit as well. While I was sleeping, just drool coming out onto my pillow. I would wake up with a big puddle of spit on there. I think it was a symptom of my sore throat, my body trying to lubricate and not have it hurt so much. The next day, I was just as sick, but I decided I had to get the heck out of that hostel so that I wouldn't get anyone else sick, and also I just needed a place to myself. Luckily in Sarajevo, I found a place for $19 a night that was a private room, quite spacious, and I checked into that place. My fever and sore throat got even worse by that evening. I generally have a high pain tolerance, but I was at a 9 out of 10 at this point. It's the most sick I had been in my life, and I got really sick in Morocco. This was even worse. My throat was so sore and raw that I could not eat any food. Even apples and bananas I couldn't get down. Sometimes I would get Cheetos or food like that and let them sit in my mouth till they dissolved, and then I would swallow the nutrients. I was in agony. I would just sit in my private room and watch Netflix. Thank God for Netflix. And every once in a while, I would go down to a nearby store and try to get food that I could eat. By September 14th, it had been 4 days of this sickness and I was really getting tired of it. I felt a little bit better on the 14th, so I went down into town and got a coffee, which was a mistake. It just made my throat hurt more. It stung really badly. So then to counteract the stinging, I got some ice cream. I felt like the cold milk on my throat would feel good, and that actually worked pretty well. My fever came back a little bit as well, so the sickness was really just in and out, but it was beating the hell out of me. On the 15th, I wrote, felt pretty good today. My throat still felt like raw and scabby flesh exposed, but fever was definitely gone. On the 15th, my friend Tessa called me with some interesting news. I had been talking to her throughout these travels, and I had lived with her family in my van in their front yard for many months before I started traveling. Now, what they were saying is that they were going to do some big repairs on their house and turn it into an Airbnb within the next month. And I had done a ton of labor for them in the past. So Tessa's news to me on this video chat was that her parents wanted to employ me as well as give me a room to stay in for the next month to build up their house. I talked it over with Tess for a very long time. I wasn't sure if I wanted to come home yet, but overall, since I had been looking for a work stay, this opportunity was basically a work stay. Plus, it meant I would be back home in Marin County and I could figure out my next life plans. I had been feeling stagnant in my travels for a while at that point, plus I was over budget from what I originally wanted to spend when I was going out traveling. I had spent nearly $6,000 over the 5-month period I had been there. I told Tessa I was going to sleep on it. The next day I called my mom to talk with her about it, and of course she was very on board. She wanted me to come home, and I wanted to see her. Plus I could see all of my friends from back home that I hadn't seen in many months. So I bought a plane ticket to go back home for 4 days from the 16th. Which meant that I would be flying home at exactly the 5-month mark of my travels. I started on April 20th, 2017, and I would be flying home on September 20th, 2017. I thought that was pretty cool. It was $652 to fly all the way back home, and that would end my travels at about $7,000 in cost for the entire 5-month trip. So on the 16th, I traveled to Belgrade, Serbia. Now the bus ride seemed pretty easy. I wasn't super sick anymore. The big problem with the bus ride is when we hit the Bosnia and Herzegovina border with Serbia. There were 2 border crossings. On the first border crossing, one of the Serbian guards came aboard the bus and checked everyone's passports. I was near the back, and I was the only person that he stopped to question about my passport. He said that no one had stamped my passport on the way into Bosnia and Herzegovina. Now, I had no idea of that, but what that meant was that somebody purposely or accidentally forgot to stamp my passport, because how they went through the passports when I was going into Bosnia and Herzegovina was they took everybody's passport in a big pile into their office, and they went through and stamped them and then gave them back to us. But I never checked if it got stamped because I assumed it did. So this Serbian border patrol officer said that my choices were to either get sent back to Sarajevo on a bus or to pay a 25 euro fine. Luckily, I had 25 euros with me, even though that wasn't the currency in that country. And that's because my friend Toby, who I had been with earlier in my travels, told me to keep some euros with me just in case. Honestly, I thought he was crazy when I said that. Like, why would I need euros? But it's because they're a currency that works pretty much anywhere in Europe. I had brought 30 extra euros with me, packed away in my bag, and man, that came in handy. So the Serbian guard brought me off board into his office. I signed a couple papers, I gave him 25 euros, and they put me back in the bus, and we continued on our way. They were very professional and nice about it, so I appreciated that. We drove 2 minutes, and when we hit the Serbian side of the border, they stopped the bus again, came on board, and checked everyone's passports. When he saw on my passport that I was American, I was the only American on board the bus, he asked where I was going. I told him Belgrade, and then he asked, "Are you bringing any drugs with you?" I was very surprised. It caught me off guard, but I was like, "No, I'm not bringing any drugs with me." And he said, "Americans often bring drugs into our country. Are you sure you don't have any drugs?" I was like, "No, I don't have any drugs." But he wouldn't believe me. So he took me off of the bus, told me to grab my bags, and we brought them into the office and they searched my bags. I felt really bad because everyone in the bus was waiting nearly 30 minutes for them to search through all of my things. They unrolled all of my shirts, unfolded my socks, smelled any pills and lotions that I had with me. It was quite annoying, but it was also sort of amusing. There were 3 guards in the room with me, 2 of them watching over the process, 1 of them doing all the searching through my bag. The things that were suspicious to them were things that I wouldn't even think about. I had these Chinese herbs with me to prevent sickness, and he smelled those. "What are these?" And I told him they're to prevent sickness. All of the guards were like, "What? There's a pill for that? That's amazing." The officer said, "We've never heard of these." After he was done searching through everything and satisfied that I had no American drugs with me, I packed everything up sloppily and ran back to the bus. The bus driver was waiting for me, sweat pouring down his face with his eyes wide, and when he saw that I was getting back on the bus, he wiped his sweat off and let out a big sigh of relief. Poor guy thought that I probably did have drugs and that he was going to be in some big trouble. As soon as I arrived to Belgrade, Serbia, I checked into my hostel. On the street, I saw about 100 cops, and I didn't know what they were there for, but I took a couple pictures. I asked the hostel worker what the heck the cops were there for, and they said for the Pride Parade that would be happening the following day. The following day, I went out for coffee, and I couldn't get back to the hostel because where my hostel was on the street was blocked off by cops. I tried to talk to a few of them and tell them that my hostel was past where they were blocking off. They understood that my hostel was on that street, but they said that their orders were to not let anyone pass. So I kept asking different guys. Finally, the lieutenant came up. He said, "Oh, your hostel's over there? Go ahead." No problem, he let me by. So at least they listened to their orders. Some good soldiers. Once I got back to the hostel, I did some research on why there would be so many cops for Pride Parade. It turns out for the Pride Parade in 2010, cops clashed with protesters pretty violently. There were rocks and Molotov cocktails being thrown at the cops. No one died, but it was a very violent protest. At that Pride Parade, they had 5,000 officers out, and they upped it for this one. There was 7,000 officers in the streets of Belgrade to prevent any mishaps. My final day in Belgrade, Serbia, I went out, walked around a bit, and saw the city. I played pool for 2 hours by myself. I was very excited to get back home. I felt like it was time, that I was ready, and that I had seen so much of the world. I felt satisfied. I slept well that final night, and I woke up and started my travels back home. When I got home, I would work for Tessa's family, for a few months, save up some money, and then decide to move to Hawaii with Tessa, our friend Sophie, and with Nolan, Tessa's brother. And 3 years later, I still live here in Hawaii. So it was a good choice to make. And that's that. That's the 10th episode of this 10-part video series. This has taken me a ton of energy, a ton of time to make, but I really enjoyed the process, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed the videos. I would also hope that these videos have been helpful in some way to help you decide to travel, even though Corona's kind of messing things up for people. When that starts dying down or the world figures that out, I would highly recommend going out solo traveling, or even with friends. Go enjoy the world, see what it has to offer, and experience some different cultures. If you haven't already, you can go back and watch any of the other videos in the series, look for a country you're interested in, and then maybe see the stories that I have from that country. This will be the end of my travel video series for now, but I'm going to continue making parkour vlogs, and I'm going to up the content next year in 2021. We gonna make it crazy. Good production, better stunts, and more interactions with the world, because I know YouTube likes that stuff. If you haven't already, make sure to click that subscribe button, maybe give it a like, that'd be nice of you, and I'll see you in next week's vlog. Peace out, mothers.